The Australian Financial Review.
Absolutely, I believe that we're getting very close to AGI. If you were to go back in time, though, and show the artificial intelligence capabilities of today, I would be of the mindset that we are already in that era today. Look, I wouldn't know anything near as much about this situation as anyone here, but allow me to ask some dumb questions.
Hi, I'm Sally Patton, editor of Boss from the Australian Financial Review, and welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success and failure and everything in between, and along the way we're hoping to get some great advice from our leaders. My guest today is Nick Flood, the General Manager of IBM in Australia and New Zealand. Hi Nick, how are you?
Really well, thank you, Sally.
How's your day been so far?
It's been wonderful. I'm a morning person, so I've started with a lovely cup of coffee, and it's a great pleasure to be with you.
Now, Nick, as I said, you're the General Manager of IBM in Australia and New Zealand, IBM being a multinational technology consulting company. Your annual revenues in this part of the world are around $5 billion, and you employ about 4,500 people. IBM, I'm reliably informed, has been in Australia since 1932, and your clients include the federal and state governments, the big four banks, and the major insurers. And I should add that IBM is the largest technology supplier to the federal government. That sounds like you've got quite a lot on your plate.
Absolutely, Sally. It's a great honour to lead the company that I joined as a graduate here in Australia.
Okay, we've only got 15 minutes. The clock starts now. Let's get going.
Wonderful.
Tell me about your morning routine. What time do you get up? What happens?
Sally, I get up just before 6 in the morning, and my immediate ritual is to walk over to the local cafe. And I've spent some time to unpackage that, why it is that I have a consistent set of behaviours. Yes, I love coffee, but I think it's more a callback to my upbringing. So I was raised in country New South Wales, and I feel that that sense of being part of a community, knowing people on a first-name basis, showing interest in them and their lives is what I get from going to my local cafe time and time again.
So when you're at the coffee shop, do you talk to a whole lot of regulars?
Absolutely. The regulars, the baristas, the wait staff, and it's an opportunity to connect on a really personal level with those people in my community. I remember being a child and it was always, who were the heroes of the local community? It wasn't the people that had the most fancy jobs or the most wealth. It was really the people that were known to be good pillars of the community and that were there and that were looking to advance everyone's interests rather than their own. So when you grow up and have those set of experiences, you come to value it. And I look to try and emanate that in my local community.
Okay. My next question is about a pivotal moment in your career. Say a project that you worked on or a promotion that you got that changed the trajectory of what you were doing.
What comes to mind is I was midway through my career. I was having a fantastic executive development experience as the chief of staff to the CEO. This was about 2014. And then I had my choice of assignment. And I took the decision to prioritise a personal relationship. I had finished my MBA. I'd met a girl who's now my wife. She secured a job at the Commonwealth Department of Treasury, and that led me to moving to Canberra. And then in Canberra, there were two things that really benefited me when I look back. Firstly, working for a wonderful boss. To the extent you can, I think it's so important to choose to work for the people that really see something in you, and to really spur you, even when you can't exactly see what it is that you're capable of and your potential.
And were you able to choose your boss?
I was in that case.
That's interesting that you thought about who you wanted to work for and how they would help you in your career at a fairly young age.
Absolutely. I think just feeling who do you get along with best, whose leadership do you admire, were all factors that went into that decision. So yes, a rational-based approach, but also that instinctual feel of who's going to be the type of boss that I'd like to work with and for.
And if you were choosing where to work again, would you always prioritise your family and your personal circumstances over the work? Because that can be a bit of a tussle, right?
It really can. And I think that the best leaders are those leaders that have all dimensions of their life in order. And I think it's critical that you have those holistic conversations with your employees and your staff. How can you set them up so that they have a sense of order and balance in their lives so that they can bring the best version of themselves to work?
Okay. My next question is, tell me about a piece of advice that you've been given that you have really treasured.
So I remember I was so thrilled to take on the role leading IBM in Australia. And to mark that occasion, I remember calling all of the former CEOs and gaining advice from them. And there's countless learnings and lessons from that set of calls and experiences that I was able to have. The one that comes to mind was with a gentleman called Andrew Stevens. His one piece of advice to me, Sally, was try to be the leader that gives people a cool sense of forward progress on the front of their face, and don't be the leader that gives people a warm sensation of always breathing down the back of their neck. And I really took that on. If you can be a leader that's always telling the team what progress you're making toward your objectives, celebrating successes, I genuinely believe and have seen personally that you get the most out of people, and that's how you unlock the scalability that all leaders uplines are looking for, because that's really the litmus test of their preparedness to promote you to ever increasing levels of responsibility and seniority.
So what do you do in times where that may not be the case? Because to be constantly moving forward is all very well, ideally, but probably not the way companies work. So how do you deal with times when you're not moving forward?
Well, a couple of things. I think be very clear around which audience you're communicating with. There's different messages as a leader that you want to be delivering to the frontline employee to what you would be prepared to share in a more candid setting with your immediate leadership team. So firstly, be really conscious which setting and which audience that you're communicating with. Second of all, really flip the conversation from cadence to coaching culture. So rather than really getting the stick out and highlighting to people how they're deficient on certain metrics, reshaping it such that their leadership know that there's a heightened expectation on them to coach that employee back to higher levels of performance or to overcome that challenge. The third dimension is to roll your sleeves up yourself. Be the leader that's prepared to thrust yourself toward the most challenging situations and grow and learn through that. But always know that in those challenging situations and times of crises, certainly my experience, you're really most often on the cusp of a breakthrough moment that can change the trajectory for the business or that specific relationship or partnership.
On that note, we have finished the first section. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to open our lovely chatterbox. So, Nick, don't go away. I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Nick Flood, the General Manager of IBM in Australia and New Zealand. Now, Nick, this is our section called the Chatterbox. In front of you is this really beautiful brown, very, very lo-fi box, inside which today are about probably 15 questions. I'm going to ask you to pick one out and we'll get going again.
Excellent.
What's your pet hate in the office?
My immediate reaction is someone opening a can of salmon or tuna at the kitchenette. That's a little bit cliched, I would say. The pet hate, I think instinctively I don't like to see is conflict among teams. And I really look to help those teams so that we can shorten the time that teams are experiencing those moments of conflict and increase the time that those teams are experiencing times in flow and close collaboration and strong working partnerships.
Can conflict sometimes be a good thing because it means that people are bringing together different views, which as a company is a good thing?
Absolutely, it is. And I think there's moments and strategies that as a leader that you can display and role model to help teams overcome those moments. You can say self-deprecating things like, look, I wouldn't know anything near as much about this situation as anyone here, but allow me to ask some dumb questions. Can I just provide an alternative perspective, set the norms that, look, we're going to go go through a brainstorming mode here. No idea is a bad idea. As a leader, you can have those interventions to really take the temperature out of the room and set things on a much stronger footing.
So do you go and ask dumb questions?
All the time. If you frame up the situation or the dialogue around you not knowing as much as that person, help me understand why it was that's the view, or that why you believe that to be the situation. I'm genuinely just looking for insights here to build my own level of understanding. I find that to be a really useful technique to help teams and help yourself overcome those periods of tension and friction.
That's really good piece of advice. Be prepared to ask dumb questions. In fact, go ahead and ask dumb questions. I love that. Okay, let's have another fish.
Let's go there.
Right, this one? Okay. What part of your job don't you like?
The part of my job that I don't like, it's a cliche of not having enough time to achieve everything that we want to achieve. And I find that challenging. As an outcomes-based person, you have a great sense of satisfaction when you reach an objective or deliver to a metric. But the reality is that you just can't have the time to do all of that by yourself. The leadership challenge that I'm working through is really how do you scale through others? And I've found that transition from being an earlier career professional to a leader to be one of the most significant challenges that you can face.
So how old were you when you were appointed General Manager of IBM in Australia and New Zealand?
37.
How did you cope with that? Because that is quite young, I imagine.
It was, yeah, definitely in the experience, our 92 years of the Australian operation. That's the youngest person to have taken that role.
Was it daunting?
It was very daunting. And the gravity of that responsibility was certainly something that I felt very directly.
And how did you deal with people who were much more experienced and had been with the company a lot longer than you, who had probably more knowledge than you?
It was really how do you enroll them on the journey and the mission of what you need to do as the leader, highlighting to them your aspirations and your vision for the company and what it could be, seeking out their experience and insights and observations, and doing so with great levels of humility. I always found that if you approach someone humbly, you ask for their guidance, you expose to them a business issue or a performance challenge that you're facing, and you're seeking their advice, I've undoubtedly benefited from different insights, different ways of approaching challenges that I would not have possibly been able to identify if I assumed that I needed to have all of the answers to all problems just by myself.
Okay, interesting. All right, have another fish in the box. Let's go. Oh, this is an AI question. We normally ask, what does AI mean for your business? But seeing that you work at IBM, I'm going to reframe that question. What are the key advancements in AI that you're seeing, and how will it help us more broadly?
I had the great fortune of being in Washington with the Australian government trade delegation toward the end of last year. One of the interesting things to me, Sally, was how AI can help propel advances in quantum computing to the point that we reach what we track as the period of quantum utility, where quantum is actually useful in solving societal issues, whether it's climate modelling, developments of advanced medicines, advanced material sciences, and the specific use case being how AI, in a more accessible language or programming language, can help quantum researchers write code for quantum applications that at a rate and pace that wouldn't otherwise be possible.
So are you full of optimism around AI, or do you have some sort of hesitation as well?
I think that human ingenuity is such that we'll always find a way to apply technology to advance the human condition overall. And I do see a set of challenges that face the world that I do genuinely believe can be overcome by these emerging technologies. And on balance, I'm very positive about it.
So how far away are we from being able to use AI and artificial general intelligence to solve the big problems like climate change?
I'd say 3 to 5 years maximum. In fact, I understand that AI is already contributing to a greater understanding of our planet, and that's helping researchers, climate scientists take actions that benefit mankind. A specific example that I track closely is IBM's work with the Marshall Space Center at NASA. So the Marshall Space Centre have an enormous network of near-Earth satellites that are capturing a lot of geospatial information around climate patterns and climate modelling. The information is so significant that no researcher or research team could hope to garner all of the insights available in that material. And so the artificial intelligence use case is how can you, in a chat-based format, allow a researcher to pose a query or raise a prompt, and then the AI will then go and collate and serve up the information that's most relevant to that query.
Fascinating. So am I right in saying that AGI is the point at which artificial intelligence actually becomes smarter than the humans?
That would be how I define it.
And are we close to that point?
Absolutely. I believe that we're getting very close to AGI. Equally, I think that could be a never achievable goal, that as advanced as AI becomes, society, the theorists, the commentators will always deem AGI to be just that little step ahead. If you were to go back in time, though, and show ourselves 10 years in the past, the artificial intelligence capabilities of today, I would be of the mindset that we are already in that era today.
On that note, that is the end of the Chatterbox section. I now have one last question, and that is, if you weren't doing your current job, you could do anything you liked, what would you be doing?
I think I'd go back to school and I'd pursue my passion for engineering. One of the things that's on my radar is the Churchill Fellowships, which is something specific that I've got on my horizon that I'd love to do in the future. Look at a societal problem where a greater understanding of that problem would have the potential to benefit many, and then pursue a set of immersive experiences in international universities or placements in other countries to really bring back those insights and learnings to Australia is something that I'd love to do in the future.
Sounds great. And what societal problem would you look to solve?
Helping people in regional communities and parts of country Australia to have greater access to the digital economy, to have greater pathways into careers in the technology sector. And I just think how powerful would it be to expose those sorts of careers to a broader range of school children so that they can have all of the wonderful experiences I've been fortunate to have.
On that note, our 15 minutes is up. Nick, it's been fabulous talking to you today. I've really loved listening to your sense of community and relationships and the idea that the best leaders are those who have got their personal and their professional lives in sync. I love the way that when you hire people, you're not prescriptive about their backgrounds and the experiences they've had, and ask the dumb questions. What a great piece of advice. Disarm people, and that will help you to solve conflict. So thank you so much, Nick, for allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss.
An absolute pleasure, Sally.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and would like to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com, and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, and produced by Lap Fan and Martin Peralta. Our theme is by Alex Gow, our head of podcast is Lap Fan, and the head of premium content is Fiona Buffini.
The Australian Financial Review.